Hello, my name is John Daniels, and I'm here with Rebecca O'Connor. Now, Rebecca is co-author of a book called Mindfulness for Transformation, which is coming out soon. And this book has got a number of personal stories of people that have found mindfulness helpful in dealing with difficulties. And Rebecca has got a particularly interesting story, and that's why I was very interested in interviewing her. So thank you, Rebecca. Hello, and
Thank you.
yeah, I'd love to just hear what your book's about.
Okay, so my chapter in the book is all about um, how I have progressed from being a very sickly child to being pretty much a sickly teenager and a sickly adult, and kind of how I've got here. So my childhood was constantly battling through sort of physical illness, really without a diagnosis in my earlier years. And as I've gone through my life, I was then diagnosed with autoimmune disease, and adapting to live with that, and the not knowing when the next thing's going to flare up. And then also the other side of that is obviously the anxiety and the mental health problems that that can bring, because I can look perfectly normal on the surface, but in reality I can be, exhausted, suffering from, the most horrendous pain all of the time. And then I had to have a hysterectomy at the age of 36, which meant I wouldn't be able to have children. And I think all of this has a layering effect on you, and it can really dampen how you view the world, and how, for me, I was living my life. I just felt as though I was racing through it, trying to get somewhere, and wasn't really able to focus on what was coming next.
And from what I read, actually, you
Mm-hmm.
found mindfulness helpful, and in particular, though, mindful sketching, um,
Yeah.
which is I find particularly interesting because generally we people, including myself, tend to have an association of mindfulness as sitting in a room, in a quiet room, which is
Yeah.
sometimes can be quite difficult, I think, especially if I'm in pain or
Mm.
my brain is tired. So mindful sketching
Yeah.
seems very quite an interesting variant.
Mm. And this is something that I've developed myself, and I've been practicing on myself for a long time. And through I'd come across mindfulness or meditation a number of years ago after my hysterectomy, and that has sort of helped me quite a bit. And then after that, I actually just sort of discovered the mindfulness meditation part. And because I've pretty much always got a pencil in my hand, and so I decided to connect the two. And I think when I was in constant pain and my mood would be particularly low, um, trying to learn and practice mindfulness isn't the easiest thing to do. Going into a room and sitting comfortably and focusing on the breath when there's lots and lots of things whirring around your head, it's difficult. It can be challenging, and so I would kind of take myself into a room. I would have my notebook or my sketch pad with me, and I would just go, still focusing on the breath, and focusing on little tiny details, but I would actually draw lines, and it was almost placing your pencil on the corner of the sketchbook, and sort of pressing really hard, pressing really gently. What were the different sensations that I would get from it? What noises did they make? So in the same way that traditionally you would focus on different things like the breath, this is kind of focusing more on your senses. So it's mindfulness, but it's without kind of maybe the everything else that goes with it. But I soon realized that by doing this, I was able to sort of get into a very relaxed or a very calm state of flow, I think is probably the best way I can describe it. You're thinking about where the pencil's moving. When I first started doing it, I would feel as though the pencil was making really sort of heavy marks on the paper, and it was sort of, you know, almost digging right in. The feeling the sensation of the paper on the heel of my hand, and that type of thing. And then all of a sudden the lines would become much softer. So you don't have to have any talent for drawing or for sketching. That all comes with the process that I've developed as a result of learning to teach mindfulness and incorporating my sketching into it as well.
I found it very interesting in our earlier discussion your take on creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And, the relationship between creativity and mindfulness.
So creativity and mindfulness, to me, are two things that go hand in hand. They enable us to be quite curious and explore, and often accept things that day to day we wouldn't normally consider. So I think the creative side of what I'm doing is it's just that, almost going back to when you're a child and, you know, you reach for something. It's that kind of curiousness, and I think that's the really lovely part about the creativity. It takes you to a different place, and it helps you connect. And I think in the current climate of what we're all living through, that is incredibly important to everybody. And I think that's the beauty of what I've been able to achieve, is that I've been able to do my mindful sketching and mindful creativity for well-being through potentially lockdown. Because of the conditions that I have, I'm not able to leave the house except for hospital appointments, and I think that for me has been just the most amazing part of it, is, you know, being able to work with sort of people in my local community and help them discover mindfulness without it actually seeming like mindfulness. And I think to a lot of people that can be quite attractive.
Very interesting, very interesting. It's really interesting how you discovered something that helped you, and then you're able to communicate it now and help other people. And I feel there's a sense of purpose there.
Exactly.
And that in itself is healing as well, is almost like an added extra to this process.
Exactly. For me, it's been a real sort of bonus for that to come out of this, is that I've discovered, you know, sort of a community of people that I didn't really know I existed, and, you know, where it's a very sort of safe environment, you know. And I think when you're struggling with sort of anxiety and low mood, and, you know, I have the physical pain side of it as well, and then in amongst all of the health things that I've kind of coped with over the years, there's then the most recent one about 18 months ago, but well, no, last year, April, May last year, I had a clot in my eye. So I went from having to, from not being able to see at all to having regular treatment for my eye. And that's been the most terrifying thing. So through being a creative person and, you know, just being in complete sense of wonder as to kind of the world around me, to then sort of only being able to see out of my left eye, which wasn't brilliant to begin with, was an absolute challenge. And I think it's that sense of, for me, being able to come to terms with and accept that, you know, you having all of these conditions layering one on top of the other, whereas at one point I was thinking, this really isn't worth it, there's no point in me continuing to kind of struggle on. But being able to, through the mindfulness and ACT, being able to separate the two, so almost the pain from the suffering part, and that's sort of both sort of physical pain and mental pain, but being able to separate the two out from the suffering part, because it's the suffering part that's really draining on you day to day. It is the hardest part. And I feel as though, yes, I'm always going to have the conditions that I live with. There is no cure for them. Some days I have lots of energy. Well, I'd say for me, I have lots of energy, but other days I'd struggle to get out of bed. And compounded with sort of problems with my sight, then having to give up driving, and different things like this. It's sort of this layering effect that things have. But accepting that has been just the most profound thing for me, and it's really helped me sort of have a better outlook on life, I think, and given me a purpose to a certain degree.
You mentioned ACT, that's acceptance, what's the
Commitment,
three? And
therapy.
therapy, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the word acceptance, you
Yeah.
use it,
Yeah.
and it's quite a deep word, the whole meaning of it, because it's not me just saying I accept my pain. Isn't it? There's something more than cognitive that happens.
Definitely.
What has happened? What is the difference
I
between
think,
you not
yeah.
accepting and accepting? How does it manifest itself?
So for me, it manifests itself in an element of compassion and self-compassion. So it's almost that I know I have the pain there, but it's almost kind of it's quite hard to explain. But I have sort of I have sort of constant back pain through surgeries that have gone wrong, and broken vertebrae and various different degenerative things. And so instead of kind of hanging on to the sense of my back hurts, I'm in agony, when's this ever going to end, it's that kind of almost getting into it through the mindful sketching and the meditation, and just accepting that for what it is, but sort of separating the two things out. So separating sort of the fact that you're in pain and from the fact that there's the suffering part of it. So I think of it in terms of, I'm just trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's almost like the pain is something that's sort of inside me. And then rather than thinking of the suffering as something that's really hard-edged and uncomfortable, it's like a chain, a sort of a block of, I don't know, a heavy block of iron or something that you're carrying around, like an anchor. You're carrying this huge, great big thing around with you all the time. And that's kind of the suffering part. And that's the bit that I feel as though I've disconnected from. It's like an unhooking, if you like. And so when I go into my mindful sketching or my mindful creativity, I actually unhook myself from that part of it. So it just enables me to have a much more optimistic outlook that, yes, I'm in pain now, but at this moment, it isn't great. But tomorrow it could be better, or it's not going to always be like this. There will be times when it improves a little bit, or it's not there at all. And I think of it as kind of almost like a bale of hay rather than something really hard, like I don't know, a table or just something really chunky. I tend to think of it as a bale of hay, so that I'm kind of the suffering part and the pain part and the two things, and you kind of like try and just think of it as a slightly different thing, an object. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And the analogy you said between something soft and something hard, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
this is actually embodied, actually.
Yes.
And I have a picture of you before you started this work, and I'm going to put this up actually on this
Okay.
post, because this is for me this is a perfect example. I can see from
Mm.
the picture of you in the past. I can see
Yeah,
the pain, I can see the suffering,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
and looking at you now, I wouldn't know, actually, and I'm sure
No,
I'm not the only
exactly.
one. And it's kind
No.
of like, it's difficult almost to relate to appreciate what you've been through.
Mhm.
Well, all if all I see is you looking and
Yeah,
feeling.
as I am now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think, that kind of really brings me on to kind of the, not so much the why I decided to write it, but also kind of the 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 learning that I've done and I've gone through. I feel that so many people could benefit, because to meet me sort of now face to face, you would say absolutely nothing wrong with her, and I think that, as a people, we're now starting to look beyond what people look like and accept that, people can be really struggling with, sort of mental health problems and all sorts of different things, and invisible illnesses. And we actually, shouldn't judge people just based on what they look like, but should actually take the time to, sort of just be kind. And I'm a real believer, if you smile at somebody, my postman will probably be walking past the window any moment now, and I'll wave to him, or he'll have, one of them will have a chat. I've never had a Christmas card from a delivery driver or a mailman before, and it's actually really quite nice that people can actually be kind and compassionate towards each other, and it doesn't actually cost you anything, and yet you then get that back 10 times over, because you've actually maybe not made their day, but you've had a kind word to say to them, or an acknowledgement that they've done something that you really appreciate. So I think for me, the reason for actually doing this and the message to get out is, you know, through what I've learned, I guess, and what I've developed and incorporated into mindful sketching and creativity for well-being, is, sort of the workshops that I've developed, and I've worked sort of with my local community. I'd really like to sort of explore that a little bit more, and I think especially with things like, I suppose, living with a lifelong condition, it's almost, you have to take each day as though, um, I suppose another analogy is when when I was first diagnosed, and you start reading up on some of the autoimmune conditions, and they say, you really need to stop pacing yourself. And if you're driven and ambitious and, want to get on and achieve your goals and aspirations in life, then you really, the concept of pacing yourself doesn't really make any sense to you at all. And when you sort of start looking it up, you think, well, the only sort of context of pacing is if you're a marathon runner, and then they sort of have pace setters and different things like this. So I think that could have potential, but also, sort of a little guide as to, um, pacing is really important, and it is a marathon, not a sprint, um, because today for me is quite a good day. My energy stores are quite high, but tomorrow, it may be that if I pace myself just right today, don't do anything too rash, too hurried, or sort of, you know, um, have lots of Zoom meetings, for example, seems we're all having those at the moment, then, I can spread that energy out. But also by doing some mindful sketching and creativity and just kind of tapping into that, I find that's kind of a real energy boost for me as well. Whereas sort of meeting up with a large group of people, whether it's online or whether it's face to face, I find that really draining. So it's kind of starting to kind of listen to your body and learning a lot more about what you can and what you can do and what you can't do, and not necessarily what you can't do, but what you can, you have to do it in more sort of bite-sized chunks as you go through life.
Very nice. It's so nice how you're bringing your own flavor to mindfulness.
Mhm.
In my view, mindfulness is the quality of being, being more present, more engaged, more tuned up to
Yeah,
everyday life, and it's really
yeah,
amazing to for for me and for us to discover a variety of ways
yeah.
to achieve that. Yeah.
Mm. Well, I think it's not a one size fits all. I think everybody can come at it from a slightly different perspective, and I genuinely believe that everybody could benefit from mindfulness, but not everybody. If you spoke to somebody, I think some people are more um, open to, or have more of a willingness to try it. But I think there's maybe some people that I've sort of met throughout my career and my life that um, would absolutely sort of just go, it's too fluffy, it's not for me. And I think, you know, by doing it in such a different way, in sort of a more of a hands-on and trying something different, I think that potentially could be quite attractive to maybe that sort of type of individual. So we could introduce more people to mindfulness without it necessarily sounding like mindfulness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah.
Um, thank you, Rebecca. Is there
Yeah.
anything else on your mind? Yeah.
Um, I guess probably one of the examples I could give you would be around how my mindful sketching and creativity, how I use it day to day. So that would be something like I have to go and have this injection into my eye, and when I had the first one, I absolutely hated it. It was just the most brutal thing. And but I'd spent a night in hospital, and to be perfectly honest, I just felt as though it was kind of would get out of hospital and then I would have the injection literally on my way home, and I didn't really know what it entailed, and it started off being absolutely horrendous. And it hurt so much is all I can say. I'm back at the hospital tomorrow, woo! And I have to have another one potentially. But I think the first time I actually took my sketchbook in with me, it just made such a massive difference, because I was able to um, you know, sort of you're lying down in a completely sterile room, like a mini operating theatre, and you know, I can just, you know, just go sort of into myself, if you like, and you know, run my hand over my sketchbook and draw the sort of almost drawing the anger and the frustration out. And so there's some really thick black lines when I actually look at it again, and then I kind of, you know, I feel myself sort of calming down more and more and more, and the lines are becoming sort of more free flowing, and you know, there's hardly a mark on the paper in some places, and you know, I calm myself down to the point of, it's just, I guess there's that sort of, it is going to hurt and I know it's going to hurt, but it's that kind of bale of hay piece as well. I'm accepting it and not going with the side that, you know, it's going to suffer, I'm going to suffer from it for a long time. It's that kind of just thinking, this is just a necessary part of what I have to do, and you know, having another one hopefully will help the problem with my eye, and some of my vision may come back. It may not, but you know, I'm still able to function and I'm able to achieve a lot of things. And I think one of them is this co-author on this book. Has just been just the most amazing experience. I've met some wonderful people, and yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens next.